Welcome to the Mindful Dose podcast, your go-to for guided meditations and real talks on spiritual well-being, astrology, and mediumship. Hey everyone, welcome to the Mindful Dose podcast. Before we begin, we want to give you a quick disclaimer. In this episode, we discuss grief, witnessing the loss of a loved one, and overdose. These topics can be deeply emotional and may be triggering for some listeners. Please listen or watch at your own discretion and take care of yourself in whatever way feels best. Now let's get on to the episode. Hello and welcome to the Mindful Dose podcast. If you're watching this, welcome to the very first visual episode. I'm here with a special guest, Taty Escobar. Hey, Taty.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for being here. Taty is a fashion stylist in the New Jersey, New York area. She is also my longtime childhood friend, and I invited her on the show so that we could talk about our Saturn return. So in astrology, a Saturn return is kind of like you're going through puberty, and it happens when you're in your late 20s, and it wraps up just about when you turn 30. So the time that we're recording this, it's February 23rd, and my birthday's in a couple of days, and I'll be turning 31. So I'm just about done with my Saturn return, and Taty over here is turning 30 at the end of the year.
Wow.
She is also just about wrapping up her Saturn return. So Taty, we've had quite the experience the last couple of years. I know that we became moms and have been learning some really intense, tough lessons with motherhood, and just we've been really inspired to change our lives, whether it was forced upon us or it's self-driven. So let's talk about your Saturn return, which happens to take place in your fourth house of home life. It represents things like your mother connection. You also happen to have turned to you've become a mother in the process also, so I'm sure it has affected you as a mother too.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell me about some of these lessons that you've picked up on in the last 2 years?
It's been a wild 2 years. My daughter's actually 2 and 3 months, and I definitely feel like entering motherhood, I was very immature and very much not understanding the power of having your own family and being a mother and being a woman, because I have been an adult since I was 18 apparently, but I don't feel like I entered adulthood until maybe by the time I reached 28. I think that's when I felt like, oh wow, I'm actually an adult. I am not an 18-year-old, 19-year-old. I'm not 20, 21, that is a very far away time from where I am now, and I feel like having the Saturn return align with literal motherhood, I feel that it has just thrust me into growth in a way that I don't think would have happened had I not become a mother at this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just motherhood itself really opened up that door of Saturn's lessons.
Oh yes.
You used the word immature, which with Saturn's themes and lessons, it totally resonates, because the whole explanation of you going through puberty during your Saturn return and the astrology lens, it's essentially maturing in your life perspective. You realize you're no longer this really young adult that can go to clubs all night and then sleep for 2 hours and then go to work for a full shift.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, you realize that there's this element of mortality. However way you experience it, there is that awakening of time is limited.
Yeah.
So I also resonate with feeling in my early pregnancy, I felt immature in a way. Mm-hmm. And I really don't feel like I matured until well after I gave birth even. And that's just because there's hormones going on, you're not sleeping properly. And
totally.
So it took a lot of time. And my Saturn return happened in my 12th house. In astrology, the 12th house is isolation and deep inner reflection. And some of the examples that are used to describe the 12th house is are places, and it's like jail and the mental institution. So there's a question in astrology, like, should you be talking about astrology before your Saturn return? And I remember like hearing that question, and I'm like, gee, what does that mean? And my husband at the time was always open to hearing this stuff, so I would tell him, like, I have a Saturn return coming up, and it's hard to tell what could happen, because I don't see myself committing a crime, and I feel okay. I don't feel like I'm going to be institutionalized. So it was just a question over my head. It was hard to predict. It turns out that when my Saturn return hit, he died, and we live 90 miles from my family, like where I grew up. So I was isolated in that way. And suddenly my person who was there every single day, like from waking up to going to bed, was gone. And I was left with an infant who could barely talk, who only know two words, purple and yellow. I was not talking much, Yeah. So that was my Saturn return initial experience. And what happens after, like what you do with that door opening, really sets the path for the next 30 years, which is how long Saturn takes to return back to your chart. So when that door opened up to you, like what were the lessons that were just like kind of flowing through, and how did you feel like you were approaching them?
The first thing that came into my mind when you asked that question was, I am very angry. And it's like, if you meet me, you think like, oh, like I'm this bubbly person, I'm, free spirit, all these great things. But below that is just, it has been burning anger. And in motherhood, I was very excited after I gave birth. I felt good, I think, for the first 3 months. And then I think by month 3, I started kind of spiraling into the feeling of postpartum depression. And in the beginning of my 20s, I was diagnosed with depression because I had the experience of my best friend passing away. And then 2 months after she passed, my other best friend passed away. And then it unfolded into like just many different years back to back of just a buildup on so much anger. And when I was finally in motherhood, I remember before I gave birth, I was having my last prenatal checkups, and they were talking about like, the little check-in chart of, how are you feeling? Or how, this is what you're going to have.
Do you have support?
Yeah, do you have support? How are you feeling today? Did you sleep? Did you eat? That was so vague. And
oh my God, there were questions like, do you have money to buy groceries? Like these really like, yeah, thank you for checking in, but this is not like the way to check in.
Yeah, this is so vague. And it felt like, okay, you're trying to give me support in a way that's not supportive. So it was just, they had said, if you have ever had like depression and anxiety, you could be predisposed to it after the fact in postpartum. Like you can have postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. But what I did not know is that a branch of postpartum depression is postpartum rage. Ooh, girl, I had to take a pause for a second because I did not know that was a thing. I had no idea. I am a Reddit freak. I am deep in the Reddits, and that held me through my postpartum time, because when I couldn't sleep at night and my family was asleep, I was just like trying to read other people's experiences so I can feel like I'm not losing my mind. And so once I entered like that threshold of which would be my Saturn return and also just motherhood, it was just like, wow, I'm so angry. And I feel like I used to be afraid of my mom because I was like, why is she so mad all the time? Like I have walked on eggshells around her for most of my life because she was mostly angry. But now I'm like, okay, I understand. There was like this meme that says, oh, I always thought my mom was angry and now I'm always angry junior. And I'm like, that's literally me. That is literally me. And so In terms of the themes that were just showing up, it was one, I'm angry and I have to figure this out, or otherwise I'm going to destroy my family. And I only just got here into familyhood. So that was one. And then two, I think just having a better, more, not that I don't trust my mom, but I think I just, with my teenage angst, you know how you're kind of like, hate my parents, F my parents kind of thing. It was like, I needed to trust her more as a person and like understand that she has my back.
Yeah.
You know?
So I looked at your chart, and I do see something very interesting that really ties in with your story about your Saturn return, which is you're not just having a Saturn return alone. The way that Saturn is positioned in your chart, there's a aspect, and it's a supportive aspect to Mars. And Mars is the planet of war and anger and intense passion. So it's making a close aspect of that. So the feelings of anger really make sense in terms of like what opening that door to Saturn return is.
Yeah.
And the fact that Saturn is in your realm of home and connection to your mother and the support that you have felt like in your first 30 years. Because what Saturn is, it's a 30-year transit, just about 30 years, right? We'll just use the number 30 to make it easy to grasp. But yeah, so when you have that first transit, it's kind of tough because the first 18 years of your life, that it's tied with home. So you have to really like be okay with that time because you're just a child. You're under your parents' care, or your guardian's care, whatever your situation is. And then your responsibility really doesn't take place until after you're 18, which puts you at like 10, 12 years of decision making that you have to reflect on.
Yeah.
So when you get to this point, and now with that Saturn return is closely behind us, we don't really move out of Saturn and Pisces officially until next year. And that's because Saturn will enter Aries and then move back to Pisces because of a retrograde, but it'll continue through Aries starting next year. So once it's behind us, we're really on this new path of the next 30 years, which will take us into our retirement era. Wow. And hopefully by then, the way that we would like view time and the way we used our time, because time is a big keyword when you look up Saturn. Hopefully by then, when we're in our 60s, we reflect back and look like, well, I was in charge of the last 30 years and I did pretty good and I'm pretty proud of it. And hopefully we make it to the third Saturn return at like about 90. Oh, yeah. We can just be like, well, I'm ready.
Yeah.
You know?
We did it all.
Yeah. I fixed my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So the door that opened up to me was my spiritual well-being. And of course, like my mental and emotional well-being, all myself as a whole, which, comes with everything.
Totally.
So I took classes to keep myself busy. I'm still kind of sorting arrangements with what comes when someone in your personal life dies. And so I'm still like sorting things out, but what I have done for myself is just kind of dive into studies about breathing and really trusting the meditation process, which is very in line with the 12th house themes. You could just think of the stories of people who were incarcerated and then they find faith in God and they devote themselves to some kind of faith to get them through their sentence. And, so not similar, but like the themes are very similar in that like you're left alone and you're left to find a faith that you will get through this process. So that was my thing. Like hardcore. And now that it's behind me, I have this podcast where I can share meditations for free because I really do feel connected to the practice itself and encouraging people to find that inner voice and that inner sound of spirituality. So here we are. So I wanted to talk about our 20s since you're turning 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were saying that before, and I was like, oh, I am turning 30. Not that it's like scary to me, but I was like, that I didn't realize that was happening so fast.
No, so let me tell you a really funny story.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine picked up my son after daycare, and I got to have like an hour and a half to myself, which was like fantastic. So I made dinner, and I got to have a hot dinner at the dinner table. Rarely happens. So I'm like, this is great. And I set up my phone the way that my phone is set up right here on the table on a stand. And I have I have my business page on Instagram, and then I have like my really private page. Yeah. And on my private page, I follow just a handful of people, just a handful of content creators. So one of them is a recipe maker girl. So I'm like going through her recipes. I'm like, oh, that looks good. That looks good. And then she goes, this is so funny. She goes, when you want to make a recipe from your favorite movie. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's see. Yeah. And she shows the clip of the movie. And I was like, jaw drop. The clip was from I think it's Pixar, the Pixar movie Ratatouille. Oh my God. And I was like, that's your favorite movie? I don't think I know anybody who would tell me that that's their favorite movie.
I love that movie.
Because I know the time period when that came out. And I was like, that's interesting. So then, I'm still going through her page, and then she goes like, oh, like the kind of the day in the life kind of thing with the voiceover. Mm-hmm. And she said, I'm a 24-year-old, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, 24. I remember when I was 24. That was 7 years ago. Yeah. And then it just like put me in this place where I was like, that's so far away. Yeah. But doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel that way. But then when I think about like what 24-year-olds are like super interested in, like how they dress, like just going shopping yesterday, I was like, I don't think I could wear that anymore. Yeah.
I totally feel you.
This is great for someone who's in like 21, but I don't know. It just changes the way I feel as a woman and how I want to present myself to the world as a woman. Totally. I so wish I could go back and stay there, like visually and just like that inner confidence, but it has matured.
Yeah, it definitely has matured. And it's like, why do I have so many crop tops?
The crop tops.
I'm like, why are my shirts not full?
R.I.P. crop tops. Like,
yeah, I'm just over it.
Yeah, so when I see 20-year-olds, I'm like, wow, like it just really hits me that I'm not there anymore, and not in a like I want to go back there. Yeah, but it just
I definitely don't.
How fast it all happened. Like 5 years ago, I moved to upstate New York. I left New Jersey. I was only 25.
Oh my God! Wow.
No, 26. I was 26, and here I am, 31, and it just feels like
damn.
Dust. I feel dusty. Like. Hi, everyone.
Creaky. Yeah. WD-40 on the joint.
So, yes, the generation behind me is doing well, but I recognize that I'm older to them. Yeah. Like I'm that person to them now, and I'm okay with that.
Me too.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I feel good being like. I just remember always thinking. It's funny that I'm this age now because when I was 10. I used to imagine myself like, what am I going to be like when I'm 28? I don't know why 28 was like such a number to me that I was like, 28 sounds grown and sexy. At 10, why was I thinking about being grown and sexy? That's another story. But I think that just being here now, because I felt like for a long time when I was in my, postpartum is forever after you have a baby. But in the initial postpartum, I think about last year when I was like a year postpartum, I remember feeling like I am still little me, little Taty at like 10, 13, 15, 18. And I am wearing VR and I'm these little ages, but what I see is like my reality now. But it's like, I can't take this off. And I can't believe I'm an adult now. I can't believe I'm 28. I'm 29 now. I like 29 better. But, I just feel that, being here, it's giving me the opportunity to, especially now that I'm doing a lot better for myself and how I take care of myself, I am in a position where I can be the grown woman that the younger ladies and girls look up to. And that makes me feel so good.
Good. Yeah. I feel like the lessons that we have learned in our 20s, I won't how do I say this? For me, I don't have to go back in time to like do it over. I will take these lessons and
Yes.
like feel like right now, I don't know, I just feel more valuable to myself with
Yeah.
everything that I have learned, that I'm not going to go back to 21
Girl.
and start over.
No thanks.
Yeah. Even if it means like to go back to that body and then go back to that like youth, it's all good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
It's totally good. And I feel that for me, like, things happened, although it was just distressing and hard
Oh, yeah.
for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I feel good that, you know, I wouldn't go back and change anything, because I don't think I would have so much wisdom now that I can actually share, that I feel like I want to share.
Do you feel, sorry to
No,
cut-
you're fine.
Do you feel like you are in a place to share? Like if you had this maybe 3 years ago, like do you feel like then you could have been able to like share this wisdom, or do you feel like this age and this point in time in your life is a better time to share that wisdom? Because
Yeah.
your wisdom goes back till you like since you were 18, right?
Yeah,
18.
18. I'd say that's really where
Yeah, and I
shift
won't get
happened.
I won't get into specifics unless you want to bring it up. But though those events of your life like
yeah.
opened up my eyes to me, where I was like, man. And then going through what you went, like that anger episode time that you went through.
Yeah.
It was challenging for you, I'm sure. But the dawn after that darkness,
Yeah.
like forever inspired me. And you were only 20, 21 by then.
Well,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was truly inspiring for my 20s. I'm sure it was for you too.
oh, thanks. Yeah.
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 Something that I thought about recently, but if it's okay for me to just like give an overall mention, but it was like a passing that you were, your friend's passing.
Yeah.
The two best friends that you mentioned earlier. That was something that I thought about when my husband died, because, well, he died 14 months after my best friend died. And then I became a mom the day that she died. So it was just like going through all those hormones and then processing grief, even though it was like anticipated.
Yeah.
What I learned is like there's different types of grief, and like
Definitely.
that was an anticipatory grief
Yeah.
because she had cancer. So we were all preparing for it. So it was just like strange and odd, and was dealing with questions and feelings, and the world was also different. Like, we had a baby when it was 2 years after the pandemic, so the world was still like in that like halfway
Yeah.
masks, halfway not masks. Like we were just in this weird period. So that really also affected, like that kind of isolation also affected me.
Definitely.
And my postpartum and grief for her. And then when he passed, it was like, oh my God, I was just coming up for air.
Yeah. Oh. Totally.
So I really leaned on you a lot, more so lately, because I finally kind of found myself again. And I look forward to the day that we discuss grief and our grief. I know
For sure.
we decided to talk about that in another episode because it's just a whole...
It's its own episode, yeah.
Yeah.
But your original question was if I would have had, say, the feel to share, like, the wisdom that I've gained from, 18 to, say, 26 at that time. I feel better about it now because when I was 26, I was super insecure. And that was just years of after. So long story short, in relating to my passing, it's interesting that we lost both a prominent male and female in our life.
Yeah.
And, you had not a 2-year difference, but, I had a 2-month difference. And it's kind of just in the span of just a short time because babyhood is very quick because Parker was still really tiny. And it happened literally the beginning of Parker and barely halfway, of the second year. So for me, it was 2 months apart. My best friend, it was a month after we graduated. I'm just going to not say her name because just for respect of her family, I just don't want to make it too much about her. And, we had just graduated high school, and then a month after, we were at a party, and I was going to sleep over, and she was into pills, and I didn't really understand pills. I was into Molly at that time, and I just started doing acid. Yes, newsflash, I am very party drug kind of girl.
But you're sober now.
But I'm sober, actually. And which is nice. That makes me excited.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sober. So at that time, you know, you're a teenager, you think you know it all. You trust your people to know what they're doing. And so I trusted that she knew what she was doing with pills because I wasn't about pills. So I just trusted that she knew what she was doing. And it turned out that the night that she passed, she ended up getting a laced pill with fentanyl, and she sniffed it, and she passed away next to me. And it's interesting that, like, I didn't realize before we did the podcast that we actually both saw our two people that we really care about, like, lifeless. And it's just having that experience when I was 18 was very... It was such a transformational thing that I never knew could happen to me. And, you know, reflecting then, it was like, why did this happen to me? And still then, I don't feel as... That's 11 years ago now. This summer, it'll be 11 years. And just quickly, 2 months after, to that Sunday, my other best friend, a guy, he passed away in a car accident. And he was in school in Penn State. And so how you said that grief is different, the fact that I witnessed my homegirls passing, like, right there with me, you know, because the night before I was putting her to sleep thinking, like, oh, you know, she's just drunk or whatever. Like, I'll see her in the morning. And I was with her, and I didn't leave. It was just me and her in the house, and I woke up, and she was lifeless. And it was very deeply traumatic. Like, that's just, again, another episode. But the fact that my guy best friend passed right after that, 2 months, like, I had college orientation to my dream school 2 weeks after she passed. And I just couldn't believe, like, what is life? So that sent me on a journey to just so many different other things that happened. I ended up getting in a car accident a year after they passed. No, 2 years after they passed, because the year after they passed, I had entered a psychotic break. And for the graciousness of my experience, I'm going to call it an emotional flooding, because actually yes. I went to an astrologer and she read my chart when I was 24 and she called it an emotional flooding. So emotional flooding. And I entered the emotional flooding, and that lasted me about... I think it started happening in April. I think I started reaching like a manic phase.
The April after
they passed, yeah. So like 2015 April is when it kind of really started. And then it didn't end until I think about October that year. But the way it was is that I was in a very manic state. I when you're in that phase, you get very excited and direct, and no one can tell you a darn thing.
Yeah, I witnessed it.
Yeah, you know, you witnessed it firsthand, and I was just going off the rails on telling everyone about themselves, and just very, you know, years of being like callada, like not saying what I think, and just kind of holding it in.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Do you feel like hindsight? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
Do you feel like in hindsight that it was just the fact that you saw what you saw that made you like for example, I shared a meme just last night, and it's it's a meme I've shared before, and I'll probably share it every time I see it.
Okay.
And I'm actually gonna look at it because I want to say it right.
Yeah.
Just give me 1 second.
Sure. We love a good meme.
Yeah. It says, "Sorry, can't talk. I've seen death, and none of this SHIT actually matters except for how we show up and love each other."
Yes.
But you were young. You were only 19 at that
18,
point.
Yeah, and 19.
So do you feel like having witnessed what you witnessed put you, like, really, really pushed you to that edge of saying what you said?
I think all of it, but I think the sense of that, while not to say that I'm the only one that lost those two people, but I think witnessing it firsthand and just having that experience by myself, because, you know, that morning her family ended up coming home and seeing a bit of it, and my mom came, she saw it, and it was just like a movie. I couldn't believe, like, I was standing on set, it felt like. So fast forward to the year later when I was just going off the rails, just saying everything, which, pause, I want to relate it back to the birth chart. When I was getting my birth chart read by that astrologer, I had told her about the emotional flooding, and she was like, "When exactly was that? How old were you?" And I said, "I was about like 19 and a half." And she pointed it on my chart, and she was like, "That was supposed to happen." She said, "That was a catalyst that was supposed to change your life. And at that time, I basically told my old life to F off entirely. Everyone that like wasn't supposed to be around me going forward literally shed away. And I think being at that age and having that big, scary experience, it just made me look at everyone before, like in that, I think it was like maybe 9 months that time happened to where I entered the psychotic break. It was just like, I was looking at people and I'm like, you guys are still lying. You guys are still not appreciating being here. You're still doing things that doesn't, what are you doing? What are we doing?
There's something about the experience of witnessing, I feel, that really changes your perspective on the world. And I remember also thinking, like, how can this just be the same? Like, why isn't this changing? And I don't know too much about it. My grief generally is an infant. I did not grieve until my best friend died, which was I was 28.
Oh, wow.
So I lived 28 years now. Oh my God, here, check this out. I remember asking Jason, my late husband, have you ever been to a funeral?
Wow.
Yeah. I had never been to one.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been to wakes, like to support people, but not wakes for people that I knew. But I had never been to a funeral, and I remember asking him that, and then he goes and dies.
My God.
That's my attempt at trying to lighten up the mood.
I didn't know what you were going to say, but that kind of landed really well. Sorry.
But I have chosen to take it lighthearted, and what has helped me to do that is I saw a medium. I saw a medium 2 months after he died, and I can't tell you my thought process that made me like, I should go book a medium appointment, because when Kim died, that wasn't a thought process at all.
Did I tell you to do that?
No,
because I went like 3 months after my friend's passed.
I really don't know. Remember. Like I was in a different headspace. I could not tell you. Like I just remember being on her page and booking it and telling my mother-in-law, like, I just, don't judge me, but I just, I don't know why I needed to preface it with that. Just, I don't want you to feel like I'm losing my marbles.
Okay.
Like, I was in that headspace for a while too. Like assuring people, like, I'm okay. I can, I can be a mom and I can be by myself. Although, I would love some help, but
for sure.
I had to assure a lot of people, like, I'm okay. It effing sucks. And it's really hard, but I'm okay. So I found this medium, and it all seemed so cosmic. And the way that I found her was on my county's Facebook page. A lot of people recommended her. She had reviews going back years. So I'm like, okay, this isn't fishy.
Yes, legit.
And she was only 20 minutes away, which for me, 20 minutes away, like where I live, is like, oh, this is just like going to the grocery store.
Yeah, down the block.
It's right there. Yeah. The first 10 minutes don't count.
Exactly. I'm just getting out of my driveway.
Right. I have a driveway where a plane can land, like, just to give you guys some perspective.
Long. Yeah.
So, and what was interesting to me also to find her was that she had just recently become a widow herself.
Oh,
so it just all kind of felt like, I should go check her out. So I booked an appointment, and immediately she brought him forward, and it was, just the mannerisms, the things that were said, the jokes. It's so the style that I wound up learning in mediumship is evidential mediumship, and it's based on evidence. And so I'm not channeling celebrities to bring you a message. I'm not channeling spirit guides. Like, I'm channeling real people that and here's the evidence to prove that they're here and they're talking through me.
Totally.
So that's her style too. So he was bringing forward evidence, like our dates, our area. You know how, like, to turn into my road, there's a cemetery?
Yeah.
She goes, like, I'm seeing a cemetery, but it's not where he passed. Like, it's not where he's buried. And I was like, yes. And she goes, like, I'm seeing 12. January 12th is our anniversary. So it was like, yeah. So he was bringing up these things to just identify himself, right?
Yes.
And then just the messages that came through, like, there was one specific message that I needed to hear. And I actually saw her a second time, and he brought it up again because I was still struggling with it. Yeah. And just not to get too into details because it really doesn't matter too much, but he passed away Monday night into Tuesday. that weekend before we had a weekend together without Parker, our son, and that was very rare. So my mom was watching Parker, and we just had a weekend together, and it didn't go as I thought it would, and I was really frustrated about it, and he took responsibility for it, and I really struggled with it because it'll come out in another podcast. I did an interview, but I basically I hit that point of exhaustion of like sleep deprivation, and for months now, I think I was like 9 months sleep deprived. Not straight through, obviously, but I was getting choppy sleep every night for 9 months. So I was not okay. And there's information out there that like sleep is so important to your emotional well-being. So we were bickering a lot, and I was like, this is not like us. Like, what? Like, I don't even understand what I'm saying, but it's getting him upset. He's getting me upset. I can't. So we were just in this like weird place. But I was so stuck on these imperfections, which I want to talk about, like something that I learned mainly from that, but also just accepting it, realizing that that was a thing that came up a lot in my 20s, is that I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. And I really struggle with falling short of what I think is perfect. And for me, my imperfection can come out like I get upset. Like my emotional regulation, which was actually like the inspiration to Mindful Dose. It's like learning how to regulate your emotions and finding that emotional intelligence. So anger, like being comfortable with experiencing anger is something that I've learned. And I think I've kind of tied the bow on that recently. So quick story, I've had people, especially people close to me, who've witnessed my anger and would throw it in my face like, you're supposed to do meditation. You're all about this and that. So and here you are getting angry. And I would beat myself up. Like, why did, So I would get that in my head and I'm like beating myself up. Like I shouldn't be angry. And what I'm learning now is like, no, everyone is entitled to a full spectrum of feelings.
Exactly.
I don't harm people in anger. I don't say hurtful things. I don't bash. I just address and I just express.
Yeah, you're direct.
You're
definitely direct, Miss Leo.
So I just had the experience this week of expressing anger to someone who I hired to do a job, and he hit me with the same thing. He's like, I thought you were an understanding person and this and that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, let me explain why I'm upset. And it's because X, Y, and Z, you fell short, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then he chilled out. But it was like, this is an opportunity for me to just feel confident in this really strong emotion.
Yeah.
I know I'm not hurting him. I'm not hurting myself. I'm just in a true state of emotion. Yeah. And I can address this professionally. And I
you're being assertive.
Yes. So once I put that behind me, I was like, oh my God. Wow, that was good, but that was hard.
Yeah.
So I know you said you dealt with a lot of anger. Yeah. How do you feel about anger within yourself or when you witness someone else experiencing anger?
So for me, with my own anger, I realized that it's like cliche, I guess. Maybe because we're in like a social media era where everyone is writing so many things online that you feel like words, for me, in my own brain, that words are just losing their meaning. But once you actually sit with it and start thinking about things, it's like, wow, maybe I'm angry because I have unmet needs. But the thing is, it's not that I need them to be met by other people. It's that I have been not meeting my own needs for a long time. And I think with being angry is that I'm better at it now, but I haven't been able to speak up for myself. I haven't been able to communicate my feelings properly. I think that I feel like I've moved in the way of, if I don't speak on this, maybe it'll just pass. But then it just boils and boils and boils. And imagine like a pot where it's boiling, simmering, but then the bubbles just start rising, and then it's like the steam starts coming out of the ends, and like it starts spilling out, and it's just a dramatic thing where the flames are getting wet. So many things. So I feel that when I see other people express anger, I I know that it makes me retreat back into being a little girl because my parents used to scream a lot, and not always at us, but like at each other. So it was just even hearing my daughter scream, which she's a 2-year old. My daughter's name is Lupe, by the way. Lupe gets very, which is not just her. This is a toddler thing. They have big, big, big emotions, and when she screams, I feel like I'm getting screamed at, and I sometimes cower away from it, and I'm like now realizing that I am the mother, and also I'm 29. She's 2. I have to stand up and be like learning that calmness is the power. Screaming back makes me just as little as her, and it's okay for me to feel angry, but in order to get a hold of myself, it's been helping me learn that like I can name that I'm angry in the moment, and that helps me just, okay, I know I'm angry, but that's a feeling. It'll go away. It'll pass. I need to be here for her and like focus on the fact that she's just having a moment, and that's fine. And I'm here to help her with the moment, not make it worse, not to traumatize her, because there's been times where she's screaming, I scream, and it's just like, okay, this is too much right now. And it would make me feel embarrassed to admit that maybe last year, but now I realize this is just a learning process, and I have to just continue allowing myself to grow in it, because how you said that I think my Saturn is in retrograde, that it's kind of like a resistance to the themes.
Yeah.
It definitely, I can feel the resistance at the same time. It's like I know that I want to step into my 29-year-old grown woman self, and it's like my younger parts of me are like pulling back, like no, like we want to still take over and be angry and use our anger as weapons rather than just having it just be the truth. It's true, I'm angry. But I don't need to sit here and let it run my life how it used to be. It always ran my life. You know, I'm sober now. I don't know how long sobriety will be. I'm trying it for the first time, really. My goal is to hit a year, which a year will be October 22nd. That was when I stopped smoking Mary Jane. And I stopped drinking, I think, November 22nd, something like that. It was like a month apart, because not that drinking rules my life anymore, but I just realized like I don't want any of this. So let me just try to be sober for once, because I have been under the influence since I was 13 and I'm 29. So that's a long time numbing, because at first it was like, oh, I'm trying these new states of mind. This is freeing. This is, you know, something cool. You know, you're a kid. You want to be cool. You want to drink and smoke at a young age. Like I always wanted to be older, but then I realized that once I got to being older, I didn't realize that I was so immature, but older. And I had to like bridge the gap. And I think the common basis was that I was just angry the whole time. And I think now that being almost 30 and in the midst of like my Saturn return, I guess about to wrap up, I realized that like I can be angry and I can be assertive rather than just be throwing daggers. And, you know, I can, because last year, with the fact that I had postpartum rage, I realized like I need to go to therapy. So I went to therapy, and I've been in and out of therapy since like I was 18. So I decided to go back again because I had went before I gave birth, and I had a couple sessions, and then my insurance didn't like translate to my regular therapist, and she encouraged me like, feel free to go elsewhere. It's okay if you find another therapist. And I'm like, that was such a great thing, because it made me feel free to have the courage to try someone new, because I thought like I need to be loyal to her. But then it's like, that's not how therapy works. You can try as many times to find the right therapist. Yeah. And so last year when I went, I kept thinking, you know how you were saying you were continuously bickering with Jason. My partner's name is Danny. I was continuously like, not continuously, but like we would have bickering moments where I'm like, this isn't us, and I feel like he's mad at me. But in reality, it was my negative point of view on the situation because of all my hormones and just like being in the midst of postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum rage. I was just, my view of my life was so negative. And it's like, reflecting back, I'm like, wow, I was living so good. And I wish that I appreciated it more, because, you know, I can't go back to when my daughter was like a tiny baby. She's 2 now. She runs around. She talks. It's just, I mean, it's amazing. But, you know, I was blinded from what I had. And I also had started smoking again, because I took a year off while being pregnant and breastfeeding. And I think I started smoking again when I was about 6 months into breastfeeding. Like my milk supply was established. I was good to go. And I breastfed for 13 months. And as I transitioned out of breastfeeding, I entered therapy, which is interesting now that I realize that. And in therapy, my therapist was like, you need to start picking and choosing your battles, which you hear these like phrases, and it seems obvious, but it's until you're like really sitting with it in your own life, I feel that you don't realize the power of it. And picking and choosing my own battles, which with Danny, we don't have battles. We are almost 5 years together. We maybe have had 2 big disagreements, and he has never called me out of my name. We don't scream. I have been more raising my voice because I have been used to needing to defend myself.
Well, it's a pattern that we've picked up on. Going back to what I was saying, or like our first Saturn return being like 18 years of being under someone else's home or care, and what we have learned from there. So it's undoing these kinds of things.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah, so, undoing those kinds of habits. So I feel like what I have noticed with you, you haven't touched on it yet, but you have also made amends with a lot of people in the last couple of years. People that have caused you anger, and you've really opened up that door to truce and peace. And it took things like therapy and experiencing motherhood. Like I definitely understand the whole like your child getting angry and it triggering something, triggering a reaction with you that goes back to home life. Like your early home life. And those are teaching moments. Those are teaching moments of ourselves and how we want to address that for our kids, you know, the future of humanity.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I think with aside of just motherhood, you know, showing me that there's a different kind of love that exists, because like your child and like the depth that you can have with your partner when you have like a baby. And I felt like it was changing my heart towards people that you know how you said, because my Mars is in Scorpio, and you know that's the warrior sign, and
well, Mars, it's the warrior planet.
Warrior planet, that's what I meant, and mine is in Scorpio.
Yes, but excuse me, Scorpio is ruled by Mars.
Wow.
So Mars rules Scorpio and Aries.
Okay.
Aries is more like the warrior and like the head first charge. Scorpio is more like what I was saying earlier. It's like you give Scorpio a paper cut and they'll remember that forever.
Forever, yeah.
So it's kind of like you hurt me once. It's going to be really hard to let that go. So you had that tied. You have that tied with a Saturn retrograde. Yeah. Which is what you brought up. So your natal point is Saturn in retrograde, which would reflect an indication of like resisting the themes and lessons that Saturn in motion would normally be for most people. So yeah, just to clarify.
Okay, thank you. Needed that. So with that, I feel like with trying to find truce with people, it was mainly like motherhood was changing my heart towards everyone, even people that I don't think I'll ever make truce with, like at least face to face. But in my heart, I was like, this is okay. I'm okay with this. Like I finally feel, at least, you know, it took me time. Like I'm, again, like 2 years out of birth. And where I'm standing now, I just realized like carrying around all this junk on my back, you know, Erykah Badu bag lady. I think I may have had like 70 bags on my back.
There was a lot going on.
A whole lot. And, you know, just taking the time to open up each bag, see what's inside, sit with all of it, because it just, with, I think, numbing for so long, especially because I used to smoke weed like for fun. And then after, because that started when I was 14. I started drinking 13, started smoking at 14, and then started partying hard by 15. So like I was just way in it, and it was fun at first, and then once my friends passed away, I was numbing. But I didn't realize that like it turned from fun partying to just numbing for 18, maybe like I guess 10 years of numbing, really. Yeah. Almost 11, because I'd say 10 years. And so with consistently just numbing everything, I didn't realize that was keeping it's like I was a bottle and everything was just stuck. And so how I said earlier I was insecure, I think it just came from not really letting things go and talking about things and owning the fact that, one, it's okay to be angry. Two, it's while it's not okay that certain things happened, it's just okay because it's in the past. But I was so stuck in the past. And one thing I learned, which this is a separate topic really quick, I was listening to a podcast from Organic Olivia, and she was talking about her journey with cannabis. And she had listened to, I think, a psychiatrist or something, their own podcast or something, where she had said the age that you start numbing, say for smoking weed example, or whatever drug you choose, but the age that you start numbing, you get emotionally stunted there. And that just, it was like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Because I was like, no wonder why I am 27 and I feel 18.
Huh.
And I was like, why am I so immature? Why do I feel like I'm still in high school? Why am I so tied to this time? Aside of the fact that big, awful things happened at that time, but it was just like, with numbing, it was like emotionally, I was not growing.
Wow.
And I think knowing that now, especially because I chose to stop before I learned this in that podcast, because I just heard this podcast. My best friend sent it to me like 2 weeks ago, and I was at the gym listening to it, and I was like,
wow,
qué cosa.
And I know, I was going to say, like, and thank goodness you're already in the sobriety headspace to be able to fully absorb that and truly reflect on, like, oh my God, and becoming aware of that difference.
Yeah.
What I wanted to mention also, just to, because I will never not say it, and I always preface it this way, but I will never not say, like, how proud I am, and it's just the way that you have taken yourself out of the rut, out of something so dark. When Jason passed, because I was so new to grief, like I said, my grief is an infant. I'm still just learning about it and learning how to talk about it. It's all still very new to me, but when he passed, I remember, like, laying in bed, like, really asking, like, how do people live with this? Like, I wasn't suicidal, like, I want to, like I wasn't just saying those kinds of things to myself, but I was just, like, so shocked at how this is so possible. Like, how are you supposed to live? How are you supposed to live carrying grief? Like, this is such a awful feeling, and it physically weighed me down. And you were a source of light and inspiration to just keep going, because I could not. I mean, what we have in common is that we saw death. Yeah, we saw it not in a. Forgive me for saying again. My grief is new, but we didn't see it in a cleaned up fashion that you would
like at a funeral,
at a wake or a funeral, right? We saw it in its true, like, essence. And its true essence, which is so challenging and so, like, mind-boggling. Like, I remember, like, being told, like, I think I heard it in a show where at the hospital they have to use the words like, so-and-so is dead. You have to say those words. You can't say, like, he passed away, or, you know, like, you have to say, to solidify it, because it's such a shock. So when I heard it, I was like, can I see him? Like, I was like, I need to see it that's not true. Like, I needed to see it. And when just seeing it, it was like, just wanted to be like, wake up, you know, like, just this,
like, what?
Yeah, it's like unreal. Like, you can see me, right?
Yeah. Like, you hear my voice?
Yeah, no. And it is just life-changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah. And it can just take you down one of two paths.
Oh, yeah.
Like a really dark one, or one of inspiration. And I'm very proud to say that I've witnessed it be of one of inspiration for both of us. I think it took you a couple of turns here and there.
Yes.
And for me, it took a couple of internal turns, like probably not one that many people have witnessed. Yeah. But it definitely took a couple of turns to just feel that enlightenment. Going back to the story of me connecting with the mediumship, that really changed the course of my grief.
Same.
I'm not here to, like, influence anybody to, like, get a mediumship reading or, like, to believe in it. It's really entirely up to you and your organic experience to believe it. But it made sense to me because I'm already a tarot reader and into astrology and all these, like, new agey stuff that like it's hard to deliver scientific evidence of its truth. You just have to, like, experience it, and thankfully, like, the style that I do is evidential, and that's enough data for me to so that is my story with my Saturn return, and your story of Saturn return really is family oriented and relationship oriented, and I feel that so much, just because Pisces in general is a connection to everyone. Pisces, like there's a analogy that each zodiac sign is a part of the body.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Aries is the head, and then Pisces, being the last sign, are the feet. So Pisces holds the entire zodiac sign, and there's a connection to all zodiac signs with Pisces placements. So I really think that we have found our peace with our Saturn return, and we have come through the other side really inspired to take the next 30 years to a really bright and positive place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so, the word in my head is fulfilling. I feel fulfilled that in this experience we've done it, not like it was a choice really, but it was like alongside each other, how it entered motherhood, grief, Saturn return happened at the same time. And like you said, you're an infant in grief, and I'm an 11-year-old. I'm a 5th grader. But it just feels like, wow, we have such a deep connection on levels that maybe a regular friendship might never cross over into at the same time. It could be like, say motherhood happens for one friend in their 20s, happens in their 30s. We would have been alongside. At your baby shower, I was pregnant and I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know? And it's, I think, are you 2 years older than me or a year older than me?
About a year and a half.
Yeah. So it's like I've been right behind you in these things. And it's just like I feel like now we have kind of just met each other again. Because we met when I was 16, you were 18, turning 18. I was turning 17 like at the end of the year. And then now here we are like about to just, I mean, you're 31 now. Almost. And I'm about to be 30. So it's just like such a big transitional couple periods within this time has happened. And it just feels nice to have a buddy through it.
Yeah. There's like that dream girls can have, like, to be bump buddies, like pregnant at the same time. And the fact that we had that, and just the type of experiences that we have gone through adds layers to that appreciation of like our paths crossing. Because I really don't know, if you were not in my life to give me some insight.
I don't know what I would do without you.
I don't know what I would do without you. Having you as a friend has been beneficial in so many ways. We don't have the time to go through it all. Yeah. But just know, like, every day, it's like, I'm just so proud of you, and also just so grateful to have you.
Oh,
yeah.
I feel the same way about you.
Thank you. To wrap up, is there anything else you want to add about your Saturn return and the kind of lessons you've learned, or just to wrap up, like any tips and advice for those in their 20s?
Yeah. I'd say advice-wise, because I could go on and on about advice, but let me get focused right now. I think that it's okay if you don't get your SHIT together in your 20s.
Yeah.
There was this one meme where it was like, sorry, I didn't get financially stable in my 20s. I've been learning how not to hate myself throughout this time. And I'm like, exactly. That's where I am. I know so many people I grew up with that have their whole setup of adultness and finance, home, car, all that societal basic stuff in order. But I feel good entering my 30s where I am now just figuring that out, because I have myself figured out. Yeah. We're always going to get to learn each other through different phases and seasons of life. But I think the whole lost feeling that I have had maybe for like 15 years, genuinely, I think it started when I was 15, when I was deep into partying and my life switched. I don't know if you want to check the stars about that. But in general, it's okay to not have your stuff figured out. It's good to get to know yourself. Take your time. Don't compare yourself. Truly, it's the thief of joy, the thief of your own experience. I think trying to relate because of, social media and everything, trying to I want to be like them. Why am I not here in my life? You know, I think just consistently comparing yourself to others really just ruins things. It just puts a damper. Yes, it's a trap. It's like you fall into a hole when the hole wasn't even supposed to be there, but you stepped in that path, and you went into that hole because you're like, I'm always not focused here.
Right.
You have to focus here. And lastly, just be honest about how much you love your people. Be so honest. Scream it from the top of your lungs. Tell your people you love them, because if there's one thing I know, if there's one thing that Adriana knows, is that life is super short.
Yeah.
Even if someone dies when they're like 60, it's like, that's not old enough. Because you think, wow, 60 is old. When they die at 60, that's like a baby. You know, there's still so much more life. Until someone is like 80 and up, it's like, there's so much more life to live. And some people just die, truly. And I think that when you don't tell them you love them while you're here, you know, that's a mistake. I think that's a big mistake that people make in their 20s, by holding grudges and not saying they love people.
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
I definitely resonate with that, telling people how much you love them, because you just simply never know.
You never know.
And the time really does pass, even though it can feel like, we've been together in eternity. And you don't realize how short time is until it's gone.
Yeah.
And you don't have that back. And that time is a lesson of Saturn.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. My advice would be definitely adding on to that comparison thing. Just, know that your journey is your own, and only you can take your journey to the places that you want to go. So spending time comparing yourself is a waste of time.
Right.
I would also add to those, because I think, I don't know if men or those who identify as men, trying to speak appropriately about genders, but I think genders of all types should know that you are beautiful in your own way, and someone out there will find you beautiful, and you don't have to construct yourself to what you think is the template of beauty that is accepted. True. Just be you,
fully.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love
well,
that.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. For those of you who are watching or listening, I hope that this talk brings you a little peace of mind in some way, whether it was our discussion on grief, on reflecting in our 20s, or just about Saturn return and how it can really just impact you.
Yeah.
So that is it for this episode, and I will talk to you guys next time.